Welcome to Building Your First Home, the podcast where we provide advice and simplify the idea of building your first home. Brought to you by Turnkey Building Group, I'm one of your hosts, Justin Engelke, and I'm joined as always by Jordan Wilson. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Great to be here.
In today's episode, we're joined by Chloe, the Victorian Sales Manager at Aplace, who brings over a decade of experience in the building industry. Chloe holds a degree in property and real estate, and for the past 12 years, she's gained a wealth of knowledge in various roles across the industry. She spent 7 years at Simmons, where she excelled in retail sales, marketing, and house and land packages. For the past 5 years, Chloe has been with Glenville's Aplace brand, where she started in business development and currently leads as the Victorian Sales Manager. Chloe has also personally invested in property and has recently completed a renovation on her home in Melbourne's Inner West. In this episode, we'll dive into some key topics, including the recent interest rate drop and how it's impacting the housing market. We'll also explore some of Victoria's hottest suburbs and regions that are not only seeing significant growth, but also have strong potential for future development. Welcome to the show, Chloe.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about your role as the Victorian Sales Manager at Aplace and the journey you took to get there.
Oh, the journey I took to get here is not a super planned one. I was first plucked out of a coffee shop at about 19 and thrown into a display. So property wasn't exactly my first train of thought when I thought about a long-term career. But honestly, from that point on, kind of fell in love with it. I was working in display sales out of a garage out in Werribee effectively for Simmons. And I did that for a number of years. Eventually moved into marketing because I was going back to uni to get my degree in property and real estate, which is crazy to think about now. I really wanted to move into development management, but sales kind of always had my heart, I think. I enjoy the thrill that comes with that. Bit of house and land then at Simmons as well, and over to Glenville, where I think I really found my home in that kind of wholesale space. Working with groups such as yourselves, I think, is something that I've truly fallen in love with over that time. And then as of this financial year, stepped into the sales manager gig there, which involves overseeing all of our Aplace sales across Victoria and working with groups for a variety of different ways. Yeah.
So you have a bit of experience in retail as well.
Yeah.
How did you find retail sales?
Oh, look, I really enjoy it. I enjoy, obviously, the emotional connection that you develop with individual clients. But I think when I was doing that, largely, I was quite young. And I think trying to convince people when you're quite young to give you a portion of their money and put all of that trust in you, I think can take some time. So I think I found my niche more so being in that wholesale space and that B2B space and being able to work with clients for longer periods of time and assisting groups with their clients at the end of the day.
I guess that's true. In retail, you're building a relationship, but it's for a pretty short journey, where in this environment, you're really building much longer term relationships and you get to keep working with the same people.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it sounds like property wasn't always your plan, but it's something you fell in love with once you got exposed to it.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I think the idea of watching something come up out of the ground is something that's always piqued my interest. I very fondly always think about the first house that I ever sold and how I used to go past it regularly, even after when I was no longer in retail sales.
You and the clients are just hanging out.
I'm going to be honest.
I used to drive past all the time.
I have never been to the first house I ever sold, to be honest with you.
Oh my gosh.
Probably for the best, because Jordan does have a story about that.
That one's for another time, maybe.
We're not delving into
No,
that.
it was a very good house. But as you know, in retail sales, there's no way to learn how to sell a house until you sell a house.
Yes.
And I probably sold a house in one of the most complicated land developments in Victoria to sell a house into.
Yeah.
And
Are we
therefore,
allowed to say where that was?
well, it was in Martha Cove.
Okay.
And
right.
you can imagine in what, working for a volume builder at the time and in what is meant to be more of an architectural type estate, there was a lot of obstacles we had to overcome at the design review panel. And I remember there were things like site coverage had to be 50% there, which apparently it's normally 60%, right?
Yeah.
But at the time I didn't even know site coverage was a thing. So when they came back and they said it's normally 60%, in this case it's 50, I was like, what do you mean normally 60? What is site coverage? So I learned a lot very quickly on that one. But yeah, that's just the way it is in the industry sometimes. Ultimately, I think the clients got a pretty good result out of the house. It just took a bit of a journey to get there.
Yeah, it's very much you learn on the job, that's for sure.
Yes.
I feel like we were young when we started in new home sales as well, so we probably experienced a lot like you, but I feel like you just get left out in your display home and it's just like sink or swim.
Yeah, basically.
Go and sell some houses and you're just like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Which is a big part of, or a big thing clients probably need to take into account when they're building is don't go for someone who's maybe too new to the role, as nice as they are.
No, I think that has a lot of merit. I think that every house you sell, you learn a little bit
Oh
more.
yeah,
And
they get better.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always said, like, at the end of my first year, I'd think back to like when I started and I was like, how did I do the job when I started? I know so much more than now than I did then.
Yeah.
Then you get to the end of your second year and you're like, I still knew nothing at the end of my first year.
Yeah.
It's like 2 or 3 years before you really start to have had enough exposure to things to understand the bigger picture of what's going on.
Well, that's it. Hey, and then you think about each different estate, each different block size, each different kind of covenant or anything that's referenced on an MCP. There's always so many different elements, and it takes so long, really, to be able to be equipped. To
and the experience
handle each
of,
them.
like you said, like actually selling it and seeing it come out of the ground, then going and like walking through what you basically designed on paper. That's when it all starts to seem like real for what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
But
truthfully, that was where I was always getting like the warm and fuzzies. I think when you do actually walk through something that you've had a part in, is
100%.
Yeah,
You're like,
experience.
I built that house, even though we didn't build them.
No, I did nothing, but I'd like to claim it.
We'll say we built them. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So in saying this, like Glenville, obviously they're a very well-established business in the property market. A lot of people might be familiar with them from their, inner city developments or custom high-end product that they deliver. Where does the Aplace brand that you look after sit within that structure?
Yeah, so Aplace is our offering, which is a little bit more on volume, a little bit more in scale, I guess, and predominantly in our greenfield estates that you'll see. And that is our fixed price turnkey offering. So it varies a little bit from some of the stuff that we're probably a little bit more well known for, because they're a little bit more custom designed. They're a little bit more higher end, I guess. Whereas the stuff that we're doing here is helping people get into the market. It's that complete price. It's the no questions asked kind of thing. It's the we're giving you landscaping, your fencing, your blinds, the whole move-in ready kind of option.
I guess really making like brand new housing accessible to clients, where without needing to have too much knowledge or skill, you can get a brand new complete product and enjoy the benefits of that without the complexity that might go with a Glenville retail brand build, for
Yeah,
example.
100%. And it's completely wrapped up. So you're kind of not questioning it after the fact, saying, okay, well, I still need to put in blinds, or I'm still having to do all of these other little bits and pieces. They're genuinely move-in ready.
I guess, a lot of people's fear, let's say, when they're building a house is, what if the price goes up? What if this happens, that happens? But you look at a product like Aplace and you're offering a fixed price product, a complete product. So buyers who might be on a budget, for example, can go in and be comfortable that this is the price I'm paying and I don't need to spend more.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely security with that brand for sure.
Well, I guess like we touched on before, working out of the display homes in that retail space, you're working next to all of your competitors. You're all offering a new home. That's ultimately what the builders do. But as a customer, you're walking through trying to figure out what builder offers what's included with who, what is the overall total price, how come that one has a promotion and that one doesn't. It's pretty difficult to navigate that. But I suppose like an Aplace offering is kind of, here it is, what you see is what you get. And the end product is still a great quality build, being obviously under the Glenville umbrella.
Well, that's it. Hey, like I think you walk through a display village and everyone has their marketing spin. And if you're comparing apples with apples, that you'd have probably an extensive Excel spreadsheet or something that.
We've all seen them.
To be able to piece that all together, where there's kind of none of that if buts or maybes. It's just here you go. This is everything that you're going to want anyway.
I think that's a good
work for you.
A good way you describe it too. Obviously, marketing spin is a lot of what happens in that retail environment now. It's changing your product to make it look like it might be better, or the promotion's giving some sort of value, but ultimately, in a lot of cases now, what it is it can be a stripped back product to make the price point look appealing.
Yeah.
But the reality is people don't live in stripped back homes. You do need blinds on your windows. You will need cooling on a hot day. So having a builder that offers that up front and included, it can be a lot more beneficial than trying to work out yourself on that spreadsheet, what do I need to add into this home? So
yeah, 100%.
I mean, Aplace as a brand, obviously we were talking about offline before, how much growth you've been going through. You're moving into a new office space, to accommodate the team you've got. Why do you think you've been so well received in the market?
I think a large portion of that is off the back of our parent kind of company, being part of the Glenville Group. The Glenville Group's been around for a little over 65 years now, so I think it's second to maybe Simmons in terms of longevity.
Yeah, right.
Which I think, given kind of some of the tumultuous years that we've had in this industry, most recently, I guess, through COVID and things like that, the fact that we've kind of come out the other side stronger than ever really provides people with a level of confidence. And I think that's what people are chasing at the moment. I think that there's a lot of builders out there where they were advertising a cheaper price historically. And I don't think that that's necessarily what clients are chasing anymore. I
Not
think
really.
that,
Like people are after value, security, certainty,
Yeah.
obviously quality as well. So yeah, obviously an Aplace build, like for us, we know when we sell an Aplace product, we know that the end product is going to be, you know, as good as it can possibly be, which for us, when we're offering that to our clients, it gives us that peace of mind that, you know, they are getting everything that we're saying they're getting at a high level.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think COVID was a good education that if a builder seems cheaper, there's probably questions you should be asking about why, because ultimately, you know, there are fixed costs to building. And if a builder's not allowing the right amount to build a house, will they be there to build it in the end?
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think one of the other learning curves that people experienced during that time frame as well was that even if someone's potentially a little bit cheaper, what do your holding costs look like then if you're not getting to site in a timely manner, or if your construction period is a little bit longer, you're potentially ending up in the same position anyway.
Yeah. Well, if you're on holding costs of $4,000 to $6,000 a month and you take 3 more months, there's $18,000 just like that added to your costs. So.
And you still don't have your landscaping and your fencing done.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You're still out there on a shovel on the weekend.
Oh yeah, well you try, but so for our listeners, we wanted to ask you if you could offer some advice. If as a first-time home buyer, they're obviously pretty overwhelmed by all these choices that they've got in the marketplace, and you know everything we're talking about with a lot of marketing. There's billboards, there's radio, there's a lot of noise. I guess for you, what's some advice that you would give these first-home buyers, whether they're looking at building a house or a townhouse or buying something established?
I think first and foremost, it's really important that you're obviously working with someone who you feel like you can trust, someone who feels genuine and someone who feels like they're probably going to hold your hand throughout that process. I think going into your first property is obviously one of the bigger things that you'll do in life, and it's quite a daunting experience. I was telling you guys just before, even having been in the industry for a while, when I was still buying my first property, it was still kind of overwhelming. Yeah. So I think it's really important that you're obviously working with someone that you feel like you can trust. There's a lot of people in a display village, as an example, who are going to say all kinds of different things to you and put time constraints on you and a little bit of pressure in those kinds of ways. And yes, like don't get me wrong, there's absolutely time constraints associated to some of these things, but first and foremost, it's about ensuring that you're working with someone who you feel like you can trust.
I think that also goes back to what we were talking about just before. You walk through that display village and you're getting advice from someone. Have they been in the industry one day, 1 month, 1 year?
Yeah.
That's something you may not know. And if I've been in the industry one day, I'm probably not going to tell you that because you're not going to buy off me. And my job ultimately at a display home is to sell a house, isn't it? So yeah, as you say, being able to trust that person you're working with and being able to take their advice and know that you're going to be buying a good product is something that's very important for a client.
Yeah, 100%.
And I guess for them to enjoy the experience too, you want to be going through such a, I guess, milestone of your life with somebody that, like you said, either you trust and that you just get along with. And I think we've all probably realized, like, when you get to the end of a journey with a client, like by the end of it, you're mates with them because you're spending so much time on the phone and you're texting them after hours when they're asking you.
Invested.
You do. You're essentially along for the ride with them. So I feel like they're the clients that have the best experiences when you really create that sort of bond with them.
Well, as a client, there's nothing worse than seeing a call from your builder and thinking like, oh,
I hate that person.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. So obviously based on that, there's a lot to think about, but what are some important steps that should be taken before someone actually commits to a builder, especially for someone that's building their first home?
I think first and foremost, I'd be starting with finance. I'd be starting to understand what it is that your borrowing capacity looks like. It's all well and good to window shop and to go through all of these beautiful display homes or of any kind, even online, to be honest with you. But if you're not really sure what you can afford and what that really looks like, it really is just window shopping.
That's
at that
true.
point.
Yeah. Maybe like when they're walking through the display homes, they think for where they are and for some reason in their mind that they can build whatever house they want on whatever block they want because it seems affordable.
Yep.
But I know I've always found that in my career, but the reality is, people do need to go and speak to their broker or their bank and find out what they can actually spend and what that actually looks like in repayments, because I feel like that's what it makes it real when it's like every week you need to pay X amount to pay for this loan. And that's when people are like, all right, let's dial it back a bit.
Yeah. Well, you want to be shopping with what it is that you know you've got to spend, really.
That's
don't
right.
You?
Yeah.
The last thing that you want to do is go out there and break your own heart by finding something that's
fall in love with a display home that's $1 million bucks.
Or even like the opposite way, right? Maybe you're looking at something thinking, well, this is all I can afford, and potentially it's not.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
A lot of clients write off the idea of buying because they think, I don't have enough deposit or whatever the case might be, but that's because they've been given the wrong information or they don't understand that maybe while you're still saving up your deposit, you could lock something in now at today's pricing and settle on that in 12 months' time once the value's gone up. So I think the earlier you're having those discussions and getting a proper understanding, the better that you can set yourself up for that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if it's a bit longer term, you're absolutely right. Potentially you've got something to work towards.
Definitely. On that topic, actually, finance,
Mm-hmm.
some interesting news recently is that we saw an interest rate drop for the first time.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was a pretty small drop that we saw happen, but it's the start probably of a change in the marketplace.
Yeah.
How is building being affected, and how do you think that might impact the way a first home buyer can build a home going forward?
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. Truth be told, it is a little bit of a drop in the ocean, but it's a sign of good things to come. It means that we're all heading in the right direction, which is what it is that we obviously want to see. It's really helped with consumer confidence. I think we've seen a little bit of increase in activity, which is really great. And I think it really shows that the Victorian market is starting to come back, which is obviously what it is that we're looking for. We've kind of gone through a little bit of a lull down here, and
I think so, yeah.
I think it's about to go gangbusters, if I'm completely honest. I think as we see the first interest rate drop come, and then if we start to see further ones, we'll find that land's going to begin to get snapped up relatively quickly as everyone starts to jump into the market.
So the land prices, will they go down?
Oh, in an ideal world. I don't see that happening anytime soon, I don't think.
That's a question that we've got quite often recently
Yeah.
from first-home buyers. The perception is that if the interest rates are going down, the prices will come down with them.
Yeah,
Oh,
no.
generally, no.
No, it comes back to that old supply and demand.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that if the interest rate starts to drop, we're going to see lots more people flood into the market.
Yeah.
And obviously snap up that oversupply that we've currently got floating around, and we'll be back.
Which is exactly, obviously, at the moment, there's a lot of rebates and
Yep.
strong offerings from developers because of the oversupply. But like we've all seen it in the industry, we've been in it long enough to see how quickly it can turn.
Yeah.
And there can be a full land price list. There's so many blocks available, whatever size, whatever orientation. All of a sudden, it's like, if you want to block in that estate, you've got to buy whatever's available because you'll miss out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of the impact is it's more around the frame of mind of purchasers, in that a lot of purchasers could actually afford to buy something for the last 12 months to 2 years. The concern they have is, well, what if I buy today and the interest rates go up and then I can't afford that house anymore? So even that one drop and the indication that gives that we're probably going to see interest rates generally stay either stable or start to continue to go down will bring that confidence back. And a lot of people who've been holding off on purchasing will now start committing. And just that action in itself starts to bring that supply level down and starts
Yeah.
to drive that price up. So I don't think it will be long before we see developers removing incentives like rebates, asking for 10% deposits again. And generally, it just makes that buying journey a little bit more difficult. Not impossible, but
Yeah.
a bit more difficult.
And I think, truth be told, I think developers are already starting to prep us for that just a little bit anyway.
I think so.
In discussions that we're having, they're kind of suggesting, well, this is kind of about to run out. The clock's nearly done.
Correct.
Because we already are starting to see a few more people come into the market who previously were sitting on their hands and waiting for this
For sure.
opportunity.
And I think on the buyer side, what we're seeing too is a lot more people committing. So
Yeah.
in the last 12 months, people did their research,
Mm.
and then, the options there were so many options in the market, people didn't feel that pressure to make a decision, where now people are starting to miss out in prime locations on opportunities. And so that idea of, well, I need to lock it in now comes back, and you get that commitment, which we weren't seeing before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the irony associated to all of this is I think that right now is probably the prime time to really lock away something, because I think we're absolutely right in the sense that the developers aren't going to keep these rebates around for much longer.
No.
And as soon as people flood into the market, that's all gone. You're not going to get titled land
That's
anymore.
right.
We're back to titles that might be 12 to 18 months in some areas. You might even get them a little bit longer.
That'll be
So-
the next problem is, people
Yeah.
come out and they want to start building. They've been thinking about it for 12 months and finally the rates have dropped. So they're like, let's do this. And they'll want something titled because naturally people want to start building straight away. If it's their first home, they're very excited. That titled land is generally what has the rebates associated because that's the oversupply. That's what gets snapped up so quickly. And then exactly like you said, sometimes it might be 6 months or 12 months or, that's when we see developers bring releases forward. So sometimes you might even see 18-month titles, things like that. So
yeah, I think in the last boom in Victoria, there was some titles that might have even got out to about 24 months. So
yeah, which
they've
can
definitely
actually
been around.
be a great opportunity also for people on the
Yeah.
flip side that, don't have those time constraints because, we've all seen it too. In 24 months, the land prices can change
Yeah,
dramatically. So
that's true.
you can see a lot of uplift. So if you're happy to wait, you can still do very well.
Even if you're banking on a few more interest rate cuts as well, that's
Well,
obviously
that's
probably not
true.
a bad time to consider it too.
That's true. Yeah, you might obviously be in a stronger position personally with capacity at that point, or borrowing capacity. But if your land value's already gone up, you may also need to contribute less deposit than you anticipated as well, which can be nice. And I think another big factor is obviously when the interest rates drop, we see the established market start to pick up. And that starts to drive more clients towards the idea of building as well, because as established homes become unaffordable for them, the option is, well, I could build something and I can afford to build something. And if that established property is worth $60,000 more than my package is, I've got $60,000 of equity there straight away in my property.
100%.
I've always found is like for a first home buyer to go and try and enter that established market when the market is strong, which is likely what we're going to see over the next sort of 12 months. When you go through an open home and there's 30 other people walking through, it can be pretty overwhelming when
Intimidating.
you're already looking at the price range and you're like, well, I'm probably middle of the range or bottom of the range. How can I actually come in and purchase this property? And yeah, we do see a lot of that overflow. Eventually those people are like, well, if there's options out there to build, then we might consider that. And I suppose having an offering like, an Aplace, fully complete, everything done for you, it's a pretty straightforward build in that respect.
I think it's that idea where you go in and you're looking at a price advertised, and then it's how far over this price is this going to sell for, and I keep missing out. When you go and you build a fixed price package, you have certainty that, okay, I like this option, it's in my budget, and I can buy it for that price. That, I don't have to go up against 5 other people. No one asks me, how much will you pay for this package compared to this person?
There's no bidding wars on a package.
Yeah, well, that's it. Hey, and I think particularly if you're in that established market, I think that process can be so disheartening.
Oh, yeah.
If every time you find a house that you fall in love with, I just can't help but think that you probably fall in love with it just that little bit less every time.
Yeah.
So that you're not,
Yeah.
you're not breaking your own
Remove
heart
that
kind of thing.
emotion.
Yeah.
I like it a little bit.
Whereas if you found a floor plan that you love, you're good to go. That's yours. There's no arguing.
You can buy it and you don't need to compete, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, we were talking about people coming back into the market in Victoria recently. Are there any locations in particular you found have been really popular with purchases?
Yeah, so we've got a few that have been a really interesting one for us. I think in the West, out in that Fraser Rise corridor, has always been a really popular one for us. They've got some big infrastructure going in there. So there's a big shopping centre, rec centre, a few sporting ovals, all of that kind of stuff, which is piggybacking off an already established Caroline Springs area. So we are finding that it's big for first home buyers because I think more often than not, they're trying to not move too far away from their parents, but they obviously want that little bit of independence in their first home. So.
If you've grown up in Caroline Springs, it gives you a really good option to have an affordable house without having to completely move out of that area.
Yeah, absolutely. So both the Fraser Rise area and then the Deanside area as well.
The other great thing for a first home buyer, like you mentioned, there's a lot of new amenity going into that area. And what we generally see with new amenity is prices going up dramatically as that's introduced too. So it's also good from that investment mindset that if we're going to have these amenities, eventually my property price will reflect a Caroline Springs type property price.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other benefits of that corridor as well is that there's quite a few new estates still around as well. And I do think that if you're kind of looking for that capital growth and that long-term growth, being in one of the first stages of a new estate is kind of where you want to be as well. Obviously, with each stage, generally speaking, there's a bit of an increase in land price. So if you're managing to get in the early stages, that's always going to be good.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that can be driven by developers too, because obviously as a developer, what do I want to do? I want to make as much money as possible on my land. How do I do that? I increase the price every time I do a release. But the great news for the stage 1 purchaser is by stage 25, the land component of their package might have gone up 200,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if not more in some cases. So it almost like there's forced growth on properties within those new developments in a lot of cases, which is great for the early purchaser.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, a big corridor that I believe in for sure.
I think this is really where it comes back to the trusting in the person that you're working with, because trying to educate somebody to buy in the early stages of a development while there's literally paddocks and cows there is pretty difficult.
Yeah.
But if that, if the buyer can trust what you're saying and you can foresee and you know what the development is and you know the developer and you know what infrastructure is going in, you can kind of educate and give that advice to the buyer and say, look, this area is going to be quite good. Although it's still paddocks, give it 5 years.
Well, that's it, right? Like, it's not just the sales consultant or you guys that I guess that you're trying to trust. You have to trust the developer as well and everything that kind of comes with that.
That's right.
I think everyone's probably heard some horror stories about land titles and things like that blowing out a little bit further than initially kind of forecast. So
Yeah.
if you're in the position where you're obviously working with a trusted developer as well, that'll
You'll
do
get
well.
a bit more certainty.
Yeah.
And I suppose we see the trusted developers or the bigger developers will often build what we always touch on, the master plan communities,
Yeah.
which obviously for people that offers a convenience. And like Jordan said, that sort of adds to that growth over the shorter term when there's, new schools and freeway access and things being built. And it also makes it a better place for those people to live too.
Yeah, all the forward thinking that comes with a master plan community.
That's right.
What about regional Victoria? Obviously, especially through COVID, we saw really strong growth in regional areas where people looked for that tree change or they were down at the beach.
Yeah.
Then when the market softened a bit, obviously that, a lot of regional areas felt the effects of that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a comeback on regional with buyers looking at those areas?
Yeah, truthfully, regional's been really big for us, particularly over the last 18 months or so. The Shepparton kind of area and out towards Benalla has been something that people have really been pushing for, more so from an investment perspective. So you can get a house and land package out there for probably a little under 600 and you're probably getting a 550 a week return.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more appealing than
Yeah.
potentially some of the stuff that you're getting in a metro corridor. So that's been big for us. And then even the Geelong corridor as well is still one that, while I think it's probably gone through a little bit of a lull, there's still many people wanting to move out there and have that sea change that you're kind of referencing there.
I mean, Geelong has always been a region that makes a lot of sense to me because
Yeah.
if you're going to be living in the outer western suburbs, you're not going that much further, but now you've got the lifestyle element of being down near the water as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I think is appealing for a lot of people. And really, you're not that far from Melbourne. and yet
not at all.
Average person's not going to Melbourne every day anyway, depending what sort of career you're in. So, yeah, I think those markets will pick up a lot going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. They've always been strong for us, and I think that we'll continue to see that growth. Absolutely.
Can you tell us a little bit about your personal property journey? So from your first home to where you are now.
Cool, I can. I think when I was 26, I bought my first property. It was a big step for me. I referenced it obviously before, kind of saying that I was petrified still. That was a little unit that I had out in Brooklyn, but I sold that probably two years ago now, I think, to buy my reno property out in Newport, which has been an interesting journey, but that's nearly completed now. And then I have a little townhouse as well that I shouldn't say little, I have a townhouse as well that's nearly complete, which is out in Fraser Rise.
So you're building that one as an investment?
Yeah, building that one as investment.
So you've got the interesting perspective, I guess, of having both done a build and a renovation.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion on that? Is it easier to build or is it easier and more enjoyable to renovate?
Look, I will say, truthfully, I've been very, very fortunate with my renovation. It has run very, very smoothly, and my partner has pretty much project managed the entire thing, but I would not recommend that to anyone ever. It's a daunting experience. I think if I was to go again, I would absolutely be building, having someone else do that kind of hard work for us, but the renovating, the coming home when everything's not complete and you're sitting there on the couch after a tough day and your skirting boards still aren't finished is not the most relaxing experience you'll ever have, but enjoyable, but I'm glad it's done.
I guess the end product is enjoyable, but I think what a lot of people probably don't take into account is, like you said, you have a hard day at work and you're coming home and your home is another work site for you.
Yeah, basically, yes. And honestly, the amount of dust that you'll forever come across is truly insane.
You did tell us a little story about something that got ripped before.
Yeah. So when in the renovation, I had a beautiful Camilla and Mark dress, one that I'd wore to my engagement party. And when I was moving just recently, the fly screen door was still the original one. And unfortunately, it ripped on that. So fair to say, cost per wear on that one was up there, that's for sure.
One bit of advice I give to a lot of first home buyers especially is that they should look at properties where they can add value. And what I mean when I say add value is you either want to be renovating a property or building something and creating something where it's worth more than what you're paying for it essentially. So if you're buying a nice newly finished property that someone else has built for you, they're expecting a premium on the work they've done.
Yep.
Have you found that, in these instances where you have done your renovations or your new builds that they have increased in value as a result of that work?
Yeah, look, we're very fortunate. I think the reno that we've done has obviously been quite the reno. I think it's pretty much built an entirely new house. So,
Right.
so yeah, we were fortunate in that in the fact that when we see kind of houses around where it is that we've done the renovation, the value of those is obviously kind of significantly larger than what it was that we'd purchased it for. But the same with the townhouse even. I think that one we originally purchased, I think it was in 2021, and to see the value of that one now is really nice.
So that was off the plan that you purchased.
That was off the
And you
plan,
got
yeah.
the luxury of obviously that time as well, adding value to the property.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in saying that, despite the difficulties of the build or the renovation or the waiting, whatever it might be, you would say it's worthwhile going through that journey if what you ultimately want to do is make money off a property.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, I think that that's absolutely the better way to go.
And if you could go back and give yourself one bit of advice in purchasing your properties, what would it be?
Oh, do it sooner. Just jump in. I'd like to think that I did it as soon as I possibly could, but I think that you've just got to get into the market. What's the saying that everyone says? It's time in the market is better than timing the
That's
market.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it's not about timing the market.
yes.
It's about time in the market.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I think truly that honestly is the best bit of advice that you'll ever see. As cliche as it sounds, I think
No,
that's
It is true though, and I think a lot of first-home buyers, like, you can get so overwhelmed, like we spoke about, with all the noise and everyone's advice, and like your uncle that's still renting is giving you some advice, and there's just so many people telling you what you should and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
I feel like if you feel like you're ready, go out there and speak to the right people, and if you are ready, do it.
Yeah, honestly, just don't wait. There's no point. It
No.
only goes up.
It just
right?
gets harder.
It
yeah.
only goes up. Yeah.
Or if you're in the market and it goes up, you're benefiting from that.
100%.
Well, yeah, a lot of people get annoyed about prices increasing and lack of affordability. To be honest, that's only a problem while you're not in the market. Once you're in the market, that's no longer a problem for you. That's actually benefiting you every single day that property goes up in value. So I do agree. The sooner you get in, the better.
And I think in terms of getting in initially, I think that not everyone buys their dream home, that first property. I think that you've got to consider it as a stepping stone. Again, I know that's kind of cliche. I feel like everyone says that, but you've got to be in it to be able to move up and effectively kind of find that dream home.
Well, if you're buying your dream home for your first property, either someone else is paying for it for you, or you don't want a lot.
Or your dreams aren't big enough.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Dream bigger.
Yeah, dream bigger. Exactly. Well, thanks for coming on, Chloe. It's been really good to talk to you today. Great to have your perspective across so many parts of the industry and your personal journey as well.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being
Thanks,
here. I've
Chloe.
really enjoyed it.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Building Your First Home, brought to you by Turnkey Building Group. We hope you found our discussion insightful and feel more confident as you embark on your home building journey.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Building Your First Home on your favourite podcast platform. Also, follow us on social media at Turnkey Building Group for the latest updates and home building tips. We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to share your thoughts, experiences, and any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, have a great day and happy building.